Good evening, everyone. Look at this beautiful full house. Thank you for joining us tonight. Welcome to The Walker. I'm Amanda Hunt, the head of Public Engagement, Learning, and Impact. We have just a beautiful evening ahead of us, thanks to Maija García, our moderator, and our talent, our keynote, Kulapat Yantrasast. Thank you for being with us for the Mack Lecture series. I first want to ground us with our land acknowledgement. The Walker Art Center is located on the contemporary, ancestral, and traditional homelands of the Dakota people. This site was once an expanse of meadow and marshland, and it holds meaning for Dakota, Ojibwe, and other indigenous people from other tribes and nations who still live in our community today. Tonight, we welcome Kulapat Yantrasast to The Walker, to our Mack Lecture guest series. While I was reading a newsletter this morning, a quote stuck out to me. The writer said, "I find that I am craving listening to thinkers, artists, strategists, and leaders in our time." Me too. That's why this series exists. It felt particularly resonant today as Mack Lectures provide a platform for changemakers at the height of their field. These are thinkers and people and creators who are changing the world. They're changing their industries, and we need all of those things more than ever. The Mack Lecture series is generously made possible with support from Aaron and Carol Mack, who join us tonight. Thank you. And now to introduce Kulapat for the evening. Kulapat Yantrasast is an architect and designer born in Bangkok, Thailand. Based in Los Angeles and a million other places, but mostly Los Angeles. He's renowned for his groundbreaking architectural design methodology. Yantrasast is a founding partner and creative director of Y Architecture, a multidisciplinary design practice with a global footprint. Y has a distinct focus on art spaces, and the studio is behind more than a few notable projects, including the renovation of the Northwest Coast Hall at the American Museum of Natural History in New York, and a renovation and addition to the Asian Art Museum in San Francisco. But most recently, Kulapat and his team at Y led the renovation, redesign, and reconfiguration of the Michael C. Rockefeller Wing at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. It is phenomenal, and I haven't even been yet. A review in last week's Art News said of it, "The Met's Rockefeller Wing reopened to the public in a totally new form, with the gallery significantly rearranged. This wing was dark and cramped. Now the wing feels airy, gorgeous, and energizing. It's a masterpiece, which enlivens a set of galleries that had begun to blunt the power of the art on view." Kulapat sees museum spaces as catalysts for community connection. The Walker recently partnered with Yantrasast and Y Architecture to explore new possibilities for enhancing our own campus here. Stay tuned. His lecture tonight will shed light on his distinct approach to architecture, acupuncture architecture, human flourishing, and his means for building adaptive structures in the 21st century. Please join me in welcoming him to the stage.
Well, thank you very much. I'm so honored to join many speakers of the Mack Lecture series. So thank you very much for coming. So as Amanda mentioned, I was born in Thailand and grew up in Japan and been in America now 20 years. So this is my anniversary. And so first let's start it from me. So why Kulapat? And so my life, started as Amanda mentioned. I was born in Thailand, which is a country in the middle. You can see that. And then I spent another 15 years in Japan, which is on the other side. And these are two of my references in terms of my cultures and my upbringing. And since then moving around and, using a way of designing to help people flourish and culture thriving. So that's what I do. But back to my roots, which is, I think is important to explain who I am as a designer, as a person. Thailand is, a tiny person, between giants. In this case, we have China and we have India. All right, and so when you're a small person between two giants, you learn to behave like this skinny person here. You learn to keep your elbows, you learn to kind of, adopt some things and imagine centuries of middle seat. Japan, on the other hand, is the opposite. Japan is an island on the far east of Asia, spread out all through the coast of the Pacific. No one bother him. Right? He just have time to think about what the culture is. Of course, there's mostly fish to eat, but it's something that when you go and have influence from China, you take it in and you keep absorbing and distilling and create something. And that's the kind of the opposite background. Of course, this is a crude abstraction, but something that allowed me to start thinking about what cultures mean to me when I was growing up, and using food as a metaphor. Right. Again, the reason why food is important to architecture and others, which is its own talk by itself, is that I feel it's important because both of it, without people, it does have no meaning. Right. Food, no matter how best it is, if it doesn't reach the mouth of the diners, it doesn't have its value. It doesn't nourish. It doesn't really thrive people. The same thing with architecture. You cannot look at architecture from photograph, from IG, and say, oh, wow, this is a good thing. People have to be sheltered. People have to really live their life in architecture. And architecture have to host a variety of events and meaningful memories to make it meaningful for humans. Both are very equally important. But back to Japan and Thailand. Japan is all about abstraction, clarity, with all the time in the world. A lot of influence from China, from Korea. It really distilled this into the strength by unity and very refining. Thailand, on the other hand, didn't have time. There's a lot of influence coming in and out all the time in this middle seat. Right? So it's all about creating harmony out of difference. And when you think about food, the Japanese food is all about clarity, one flavor, one ingredient at a time. You're not mixed as much. Thai cuisine is all about mixing. There's nothing real original. There's a lot of Indian food, a lot of Chinese, a lot of indigenous, but the way of mixing allow this culture to have a cultural product that is notable around the world. And for me, as a young Thai boy, I thought about that, as in how could this cultural invention travel the world and have a distinctive impression on people. And that's why I felt like I want to talk a little bit about this subject. And why I think, the world is moving from Japanese sushi to soft mixed pad Thai. Because we no longer have an exclusive club as one person making decision for the world, or one person making decision for the country, no matter whoever try to. Right? It's about everyone coming together with our differences, with our, trying to do the best. And so the architect, in this case, we should not be a prima donna or a diva. We should be more like a conductor. Bringing all the ideas together, all the instruments, all the voices together, and create a sense of harmony. So everything, it's kind of strength by unity rather than by singularity. That's why I think even though I love sushi too, I think pad Thai, we can learn a lot from that, from mixing and harmonizing differences. And so quickly about the firm, this is our office here. Again, we're not into architects at lone wolf hero. I think this is a wonderful image of what an architect is. We all love Ayn Rand's Howard Roark in The Fountainhead, right? What amazing vision. No compromising, doesn't listen to anyone, clients, whatever. At the end of the day, burn his own project because of compromise. Oh, what a noble idea. But in reality, it's really such a problem because who is using it and who designing for? It's not about your own vision, but how you talked about that. So immediately when I start the firm, I start to think, I don't want it to be a hammer, because when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail to you. Right? So it should have to be a toolbox by bringing everyone together, architects, designer, graphic designer, everyone together. So bring different ideas and make into this. So when we're still quite small, but we try to bring diversity in our kitchen, because we believe that if we don't start from enriching our process, the end product cannot be rich by itself. So that's a part of that. So we have 5 workshops that, it's like a grand way of talking about it, but it's all mixing together people from architecture to landscape to objects to ideas. And also we have a specific workshop based on museums, which are not just museum architecture, but scenography, museography, exhibit design, and even museum future, which is something we think a lot about. So, again, I tell my team all the time that, I learned this from Howard Schultz of Starbucks, right? It's like, he said that we're not in a coffee we're not in a coffee business, we're in the people business. The same thing I told my staff, we're not in the form business, we're in the people business. We need to be able to deliver the experience, not the form, which lead to my, again, mantra, which is design the life with the form. Or, not by the song by itself, but let's aim to impact on life and make it better. And so we talk a lot with people, we spend a lot of time engaging, know what's going on. And I think more and more, we work more in culture. I feel architecture can play a good role in connecting people back to culture. So that's what we're trying to do. Connection is one of the things that we miss in this generation. A lot of people are really sad of loneliness, feel isolated and fragmented. And culture is a big glue that allows us to connect. And culture, I mean everything from art to food to dance to music, architecture, and all of the things around us that make life worth living. Right. So, for example, the first project is a center that I designed in East Palo Alto in the Bay Area with the children, with the youth from 8 to 18, to really allow them to empower what their future should look like. The program, we spent 2 years working with the youth to figure out, and these are, East Palo Alto, if you don't know, is surrounded by the most wealthiest company in the world, from Google to Apple to Facebook to everything else. And this is, in a way, the service community. Most of them are immigrants. Most of them are working on this place. So to be able to give them the sense of hope, the sense of future, we listen to them and we don't tell them what art or center or culture you look like. They can think about it for themselves. That's why we took 2 years working with them to figure out what that means for them, not for all of us. We spend a lot of time looking at buildings together, learning together, and that's the process of, if you want to build something for someone, asking them, engaging with them is the most important part of the job. This is part of that. Again, this is the end product. And the end product is, even though I'm the designer, a lot of these are from the youth. I listen to them, the program, the design, the colors, how they want to use the space and all of that. I'm very proud because it is a full co-creation that allowed them to really see themselves within it. And since it opened during the pandemic, since every day is very busy with people, not in this picture, because it's taken during the pandemic time, you can see children, all of these, they see themselves in it because they've been living in it, and there's even the generations of children going through this many times. This is one of the projects I mentioned, which is something that is all historic. This wing was built at the American Museum of Natural History in 1896. It's actually the original gallery of that museum. And it was built for the Northwest Coast Hall, which is the native population along the coast. And it's like a period room. But what I learned from it is, again, it's museum design in a different level, perhaps not really that, close to the Walker, because it's all historic material that were collected at that time. But the idea of museums as sites of empathy. This is where we go to learn about other people's culture. This is how we understand. It doesn't have to be our own food. We actually can appreciate other people's food and other people's music as well. So we could also appreciate other people's art as part of our live project. So this is one of the projects that we're very proud about. We co-create again with all of the 12 nations along the coast. I spent 4 months with them, variety of places, went to many potlatches and meetings to try to understand what are the meanings of the culture they want to represent within this place in New York City. So it's something that's important to think about as we continue to venture into a museum. Of course, every time I work on a museum project, I felt like I've got another PhD in a variety of fields because the curators and conservators are really great teachers. And one thing that we talked about before is an idea of the acupuncture architecture. This is the project, the Museum in San Francisco, which used to be a public library built in 1927 and was expanded before in the 90s, and then we expanded again, just opened about 3 years ago. Again, it's about what is a museum and why is it important? Right. I think one thing that I come up with this idea is how to decentralize a museum, which the Walker already doing. That's why you're all here on Thursday night, right? Because museums in general is built as a temple. Everything is closed in, like a peacock. You get into the lobby, and from the lobby you go to everything else. Everything has to open to be able to open late. So I kind of advocate the idea of moving from peacock to octopus. And when octopus, I mean that museum program are reaching out into the communities, classrooms, a coffee shop, galleries, programs. So you don't have to open the whole museum, which make it difficult for museum because of staff and securities and other things. You are able to allow different part of the museum to engage with people different hours, which is something that I learned from the guards and the people, because I asked them, like, why are you not, people are not coming? And they said, well, because they're working. Right. Okay. Well, like why they don't come on the weekend? Because they're tired with children. Right. So therefore, we have to find a way to meet them halfway by opening and make it easy for people to come in. If we have an hour or 2 hours, there's a way for museum to engage. So this is part of that thinking. Again, we also expand and create this beautiful rooftop, which is the biggest one in San Francisco city center itself. Give them a column-free space for flexibility from traditional gallery space to this is a team lab exhibition they have with the opening. Another museum that also followed that sense of acupuncture is a speed art museum in Louisville, Kentucky. Again, another American Beaux-Arts temple built in 1927 that we have been built many times and expanded almost every generation. Right, so this is the one that I really coined the word acupuncture, because when I visited for the first time, when we were competing for the job, I felt like the whole building feel very stuffy. Like I don't really know where I'm going. I'm going from one gallery to the other. I feel like I'm in a body which have a cold. So I was talking to one of my friends, like, well, they asked, like, what's your experience? Like, I felt like I'm in a stuffy body, like someone have a cold. I just want to take a needle and just like acupuncture it at a certain point to make things clear and flow better. And then they said, just use that in your interview. So I did. So that's become my kind of, again, we talked about acupuncture here at the Walker as well, which is to be soon. But the idea is that the most important thing about acupuncture architecture is that you believe that the power is within the body, right? You're not adding anything to it. You actually rejuvenate from within. So we already have all the good stuff. You don't really need to expand. You don't need a facelift. You don't need anything else. You need to stimulate at the right moment for your own internal power to be aligned. So that's the power, which I believe that every living things have that. Right, so I think the idea again with especially museums, because with museums like this exist before we were born and will continue to live on after we all go. So we only touch the life of this museum for such a short time. So what we do to it should be something very thoughtful, reversible, and help for the museum to thrive with health and future. So that's something that I kind of think a lot about, this kind of thing. This is a speed art museum. Again, really, we open up the museum to open, connected to the building, to the city itself. A lot of light fill. I feel light is important. A lot of museums do not have light because they want wall space and they want it to be contained. I feel like that we need to let life and nature into the building. So I tend to encourage a sense of light and a sense of time and orientation as well to come into that. We also did the interiors of the Harvard Art Museum in Cambridge, working together with the architect Renzo Piano. So we did that. We spent 3 years working with the curator of the 3 museums combined to one, which is the Falk, the Busch Reisinger, and the Sackler combined to the Harvard Art Museums. Again, it is a lessons about how you really create a place for flexible for art from different parts of the world to coexist together in the historic building, which is used to be the Falk, working closely with the curators to figure out how the work can really be inspiring, yes, of course, but a teaching tool for also students and faculty. The slogan for the Harvard Art Museums is, close-looking critical thinking, and how that can be something that used as a teaching tool for people to look deeply and think and have a conversation. Sense of discovery is extremely important in museums. I could not imagine. I was talking to Amanda early on that I myself discovered art when I was 7 years old, when my parents dragged me to a museum, and it was not fun at that time, but it left a big memory. So I always reminded by Mrs. Dominil from the Menil collection in Houston, who said, "What is important to me is what I discover." right? And I think it stayed true for all of us. We don't want to be told what to look at or what to know. We want to discover. And that moment is what museums should open it up to. This is something that we design all the display for the Academy Museum in LA, which is the first film museum for the Oscar. So working with the curators, again, talked about film culture, but mostly about collaboration and creative city, which is Los Angeles itself. We also design a free art fair in Los Angeles since the beginning every year. But now leading on to another subject, which is people. And I'm saying this because in my line of work, sometimes people are seen as, again, going back to the fountainhead, compromiser, right? I mean, because it seems like the idea exists and then, oh God, we have to make the compromise with the people. Like, that's a wrong way of looking at it. Like, if the food is not for people, what is it for? Right? At the end of the day, if you start from the people working back to it, perhaps the result is actually nourishing to you and to everyone else as well. So we think a lot about these things. This is my own house. I want to talk about, not that it's fancy or anything, but I felt that it kind of mixed that kind of Thai pad Thai and Japanese sushi in a kind of interesting way. It's very eclectic, but also have a sense of minimal, brutal aspect of a concrete. I think it's very indoor-outdoor, visit California, and also Thai style in some sense. It's whimsical because of the object and things and others. So I feel like this has come, at lunch I mentioned I try very hard not to design my own house because I felt like it was not a good thing for me, but I couldn't find anything I can afford, so I ended up building my own house. And I've been living it for 11 years, and every day still I'm learning from it. And it's something that's so important to me that I'm seeing myself, I'm asking myself tough questions as I was going through it. So that's learned. And I, of course, develop a lot of empathy for my clients too. So that's a big part of that. This is, again, the house itself. We design all the furniture, everything else, mostly concrete because it's easy and not difficult to build. This is the interior of it. Very whimsical art, furniture, depending on what that is. This is the house on the outside. I'm in Venice Beach in California by itself. And one thing that I talked about before is design the life, not the form. So what is life about? Life is about awareness of who we are. From the house that I design, from this garden we designed in the south of France, using feather to talk about the seasons and the animals together with the plants. Life is also about nature. This is a project that we start in the beginning as a nonprofit and now become profit, and now it's about to be open. It's called the Art Bridge, the crossing the Los Angeles River. And so it was a bridge to talk to cross the small river, LA River, a branch of it. But at the same time, it also functioned as a platform to view the mural, which is painted 35 years ago about the history of Los Angeles through the lens of water. Right. So when I went to see it, I was very angry that there's so much trash in the river. So I felt like I need to put trash into the bridge so people can see what they treat the river, and the river is treating it back. So we built this bridge out of this reclaimed trash from the river, working with the recycle agencies to do that. And we create these layers. Of course, you can see that the handrail is made from chopping card. We use this kind of poured concrete from ram earth, but put the debris that we found in the river itself. The city loved it because they're using it as a teaching tool to talk about recycle. You can see your grandparents' trash, you see your parents' trash, and you see your trash. So you realize that nothing is going away. It just goes buried into the earth. So this is a way of unearthing and teaching children about all of that. We do the mock-up there. And moving on to the other nature, this is a competition we won in Scotland 6 years ago, which is right under the castle. Again, I mean, it's about the whole park, but also the pavilion that allow people to enjoy music indoor and outdoor. It functions outdoor as well, but indoor it's also have a glass wall that can close off, so you can do music also in the winter time. So this is something that the phase one is already open, and now we're moving on to phase two to build more pavilion and landscape as well, as you can see here. And it's a long story, but it is a healing between the old city and new city of Edinburgh, which a train line cut in the middle. So we're using architecture also as a way of connecting the people back together using this competition. So this is another house that we just completed in Hollywood that we learned from mushroom. And so the idea, this is the house itself, that it kind of perch on this, almost like with like a shelf mushroom hanging on the cliff and rotate towards the sun. So this is what we did. This is what it just opened. Is really sitting right under the Hollywood sign. So that was part of that. Again, I mean, really. We also have a museum that just started construction in the Philippines, right on the river. Again, I would love to see present the sense of place, that our work doesn't really have one style. This one I felt very strongly coming from Asia that it should feel like it belonged to the Philippines. So we're using the material. These are actually not wood. These are actually aluminum because it's easier to maintain in that hot and humid climate with a lot of rains. So we are able to do that. In the whole indoor-outdoor is a big part of who I am and what the space I want to provide in that part of the world. It's for art, design, music. The Filipinos are very musical and very performance-oriented. So we want to be able to put that platform together with technology and many other things into the same space. So that's what we did, which hopefully open in a few years. This is another museum in Bangkok, my hometown, which already done but opened in December. It's called Dip, which means raw in Thai. This is, again, a private museum, but it's a big private museum that talks about how we can really help the Thai art with contemporary art to be on the same platform together. This is a courtyard. It was a warehouse I completely redo and then add so many things around it, including the courtyard. And the aspect of, there's a James Turrell on the roof, there's many other aspects to it. Again, these are empty without the art and people yet, but it opened December 20th, so I hope everyone to come. It would be a lovely time to visit Bangkok. And we also have the Thailand Biennial opening around that time, so that would be a good time to visit. There's, again, architectural moments and other things. That's just pictures. This is a museum that we are under construction, opening late next year. It will be the biggest museum in Saudi Arabia, in Riyadh. This is a museum, a direct commission from the Crown Prince, which is the Museum of Art, Science and Technology, which is smart in this country. But it's something that he's showing the world that this is the center, this is for family. It will also be the first public building that men and women can go at the same time, which is still quite new in that kingdom. And so this is quite a big museum. The globe itself, surrounded by these colorful solar panels that we developed with an engineer in Germany, but fabricated in Turkey, will be installing soon. That's around 8-story tall, and then there's 4-story of this earth. You can see the green roof, which is the area that, up until now, agriculture is not a big factor of the kingdom, but they want to learn about agriculture, about how we grow the food and things like that. So this will function as an outdoor laboratory for children to learn about where food come from and things like that. So this is, all a learning experience in and out of this museum. This is the inside. I may add that the globe itself is actually not all indoor. Most of them is actually outdoor. So the idea, there's a ventilation coming through, there'll be some spaces, and there'll be an atrium here to go all the way from the top to below. You can see the waterfall from the top coming down. So that's part of that. We also have another project which is sadly stopped because of the war. This is in Russia, in Perm, which is the gateway to Siberia. This is done one of the biggest performing art spaces in Russia. It is an opera house with a symphony hall, with ballet school, and many things combined to one building. And it's right in the middle of Perm on the river itself. So hopefully, it just started construction a few months before the Ukraine war. So hopefully, it has a chance to live on, because I think culture, at the end of the day, should have a chance to connect people and heal everyone. This is part of it. Inside, we learn from the copy industry in Perm. The movements all because of the choreography, the ballets and things like that around. So there's a sense of curvature and movement within the building itself. This is the project that just opened last week, which is the Rockefeller Wing at the Met, which we receive a lot of great comments, the press, and for everyone. I think it would change the way art like this are displayed in New York and the world as well. The Rockefeller Wing is a wing of collections of arts of Africa, Americas, and the Oceania. So the three regions combined cover around 3/4 of the world. It opened in 1982, which means that before that, the Met only covered 25% of the world. right? So I think this, in some sense, in this 40,000 square feet, make the Met encyclopedic. But at that time, until then, Western museums do not see that art from other cultures deserve to be called art. Right? It was only then that it's now become common. So that's why it's important to think about what that means. And for me, it's important to treat these materials in the same way you treat a Greek sculpture or Japanese folding screens and others, to be able to create an uplifting experience and focusing on the artistic achievement that these three regions has offer. And I'm very grateful because the reception has been very overwhelming and very wonderful to listen to. So this is that. Also New York Times as well. So all of these behind the scene, we worked together. This project took 10 years. When we were picked as the architect, we worked closely, of course, the change of presidents, change of museum directors, and the pandemic and everything else. And we learned a lot. The Met did everything in-house, from conservation to planning and map making, even lighting fixtures, so everything else. It took longer time, but we all learned that we get knowledge as part of that process. So this part of that construction. This is a complete pictures, just literally from last week. So again, if you come to New York, I would love to invite you to visit. It's a lovely place, and for the first time, that window to Central Park is now open. So we changed the glass wall. We work with the engineer to conserve the energy, filter the light so that the light is safe enough for the light sensitive material. We have the windows. You can look out to the park, 200 feet long of windows. So this is also game changing for the Met as well. So this is part of the view itself. Again, we also have one of the things that we do is we design the casework and the exhibition so that it's easy to move things around. I mean, big museum only show a very small percentage of their collection. So to be able to help the staff to rotate things quicker and easier is what we're trying to do in our museum design as well, especially work on paper, textile, or light-sensitive material. We work closely, again, you see this during the pandemic, testing the case in Italy with the curators, conservators, our team as well, to figure out. In this case, I point out Brian Butterfield, who's our director of museum workshop, who actually has been working closely with me also here at the Walker itself. It's part of that. And the last project, we won a competition last year, which is the new department at the Louvre in Paris. And so this is, again, it's around 8,000 square meters, 80,000 square feet. It's in 20 years, new department that the Louvre just created. It is something that, in my reading, what the Louvre have learned from having the Louvre in Abu Dhabi. The Louvre in Abu Dhabi is 10 years. Right, and what it learned is that from the antiquity times, which is around the Roman, around let's say year 0, to around the year 1000 or a year 900, these are the most pivoting time of the world we live in today, because you're moving on from antiquities, the birth of Christianity, the birth of Judaism, the birth of Islam, leading on to many other things around, and the world we're living in, the conflict, the interests, the wars, are coming from these. And when you look at this work together, which this department will try to provide, you understand that we all grew up from the same, for lack of a better word, Abrahamic root, right? And how of these, at one point, we're actually learning from each other and really borrowing from each other meaningfully, culturally, in many ways. So you see, the manuscript, the sculpture, architecture fragments, and many things that when you look closely, like, is that from Islamic culture? Is it from Christian culture? Sometimes you cannot even tell it apart, right? So hopefully by not being too political, but allow people to look back and say, you know what, at one time we were actually close by together. We actually almost one family. And that's something that the Louvre is trying to do. And so we are so honored to be a partner with them to imagine this experience. We hope in 2027, at least part of it, because this is also President Macron's legacy. So he will open it before he leaves office, and then we'll continue to complete the wing further on. So this, again, starts from late Roman period into the birth of Christianity, Byzantine, Islam, and even part of the other belief system around that region as well. So that, again, so I'm closing now. I hope it's not too late. So again, it's important for me to think about what life can bring and what architecture can help it flourish. So again, we don't want to be a lone wolf in the bubble. We also want to be an ecology. We want to be inclusive of everyone else. Look how happy these animals are. We want to be that. We don't want to kill each other. We also don't want to be a diva. We want to be a team orchestra. So I'm advocating the role of an architect who's not a diva, but more like a conductor of different ideas together towards a symphony. So that's all. Thank you. This is my team. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Kulapat. My name is Megan Leafblad, and I am the Associate Director of Public Engagement here at the Walker. We are not done, do not worry. I want to introduce another creator and fellow world builder, Maija García. Maija, like Kulapat, contains multitudes. They're a theater director, a cultural innovator, an advocate for equity in the arts, and many more things. I'm going to tell you a few of those. But I will spare you their beautiful CV so we can jump into a dialogue between these two, but I want to highlight a couple things. Garcia most recently directed I Am Betty, a world premiere hit musical at the History Center. They developed the bilingual cineplay Our Hood with John Leguizamo. They have been the director of movement for Spike Lee's Oscar award-winning Black Klansman. They have things they've worked on with Netflix. Their work in film extends into documentaries. They've been the executive producer on The Art of Dance, a choreographer, creative director for Fela. They have also worked with another Walker friend and alum, Bill T. Jones. They've led dozens of productions in major venues across the United States, as well as Europe, Africa, the Caribbean. But they are committed to elevating original work that's at the intersection of theater, music, dance, film, and television. In that work, they also founded the Harlem-based cultural arts organization, Organic Magnetics, that generated urban folklore for the future. They recently left a job at the Guthrie as the Director of Education and Professional Training. And they are on day 3, so generously here as well, as their new role of the director of the Capri Theater in North Minneapolis. So please join me in welcoming Maija and Kulapat to join in conversation.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I love those oohs and ahs with the Capri Theater. Thank you so much, Kulapat, for having me here with you, and thank you all for attending this Mack Lecture Series. I know I'm inspired. Let me see a couple of hands raised. That's right. So Kulapat, we could talk for hours. We know that. So I'm going to try to keep it short. But I want to begin with your origin story. You talked a bit about sort of Thailand being in the middle and Japan and the places that informed your beginnings. But I'd love to know a little bit more about sort of thinking about the time and place in the world. What are the influences that shaped you, that made you who you are?
Wow. Well, I think I think almost like every young person, when I was growing up, I was trying to push my parents away. Right, I want to be independent, and I think I was a very independent baby. I remember being stubborn as a baby, and but my parents are young people trying to make a living, decided to go to Europe for the first time for themselves, and dragged me there when I was 7. Right, and I remember not having a good time then because I was like, what's going on? And there's a lot of other logistics which is difficult for a young family to go through. But I remember for the first time seeing Paris as it was, right? And I don't even know that's my first time ever leaving Bangkok, which is my hometown. It's like, what is this? I'm just like, it looked like one thing connecting to these things. Like it's something I could not describe, but but I felt like, wow, humans made this. Right, this is not something. It was so different than what I was growing up. Bangkok when I was growing up was beautiful too, not so today. But that's when it gave me such a deep sense of like, I can make this. I can make the environment. Yeah.
Was there an inciting moment or a catalyst for you that sort of woke you up to this path to becoming an architect?
Well. There is one, literally. So the next year, after Paris, we had a house renovation in Bangkok. It was a tiny little house, and I have a younger sister, and we have a started growing family. So the family decided to expand. Right, and I was and my father, who was an engineer, was trying to engage me in this conversation about like, what do I want, what do I don't want, bigger room, some terrace and not terrace. I was remembering being angry. It's like, what are you talking about? Just give me a room. Like I don't know why you were asking me about do I want a terrace or not a terrace, right? But one day, talking about waking up, I was in my bed. I remember maybe 8 years old at that time, and then the workers were starting construction in my own bedroom. And so I was in this bed, I'm sharing toilet with other people, and this wall was completely pop open. Wow. And I remember it was like, I was angry, being annoyed by this noise, but then I turned around, it's like this whole wall was gone, and there's a mango tree there. So it's like, what's going on? And then I realized that, you see all of the details of the constructions, or like behind the walls and stuff. So I realized for the first time that, wow, the environment that we are in, it's so easy to change, right? You can just move this wall, you just kind of crack open. And then, okay, I'm sorry, long story, but that summer, also because I was bored, we didn't go anywhere. So my father was also, well, since you don't have anything to do, why don't you go around and pick up loose nails? And you can sell it back to me at the end of the day. So I was hanging out with the workers, picking up loose nails and trying to weigh it so I can sell it back to my father.
Very
so that was
industrious.
part of my love architecture, yes.
That's amazing that I used the phrase "woke up"
I
to,
know.
and it clearly was.
And we did not cue this up.
We are connected.
This is
We're
very
connected.
synergy, yes.
So I'm curious, as a world traveler and a global ambassador of culture, how has the work over the years, working, as you say, earning many PhDs with the research that you must do in each place to understand the place and the people there, how has the work changed you over time?
Oh, very much so. Very much so. I definitely, somewhat have a kind of a humility. I'm sure I have some humility before, but I definitely have more, because the more you know, the more you become humble, because there's so many things in the world that you just discover for the first time, and to be able to understand and to be able to work within the culture, to be able to offer someone a reason to live and reason to connect and thrive has become such a joy. It's not only me, like when the Met opened, one of my designers has been working with me for 18 years, even though he looked like he's 25, and he's like the most like quiet person you ever met, right? And we talked about that, and I asked Honest, I said, what do you think? Tell everyone here what you think about this. And he said, it's really humble to be able to build this, even though it took 10 years to make this, that this will stay. And then everyone that come here, even today, already, you can see the happy in their face, and that's already worth it. Yeah, so that's something that we all, at the end of the day, yes, of course, you don't want to lose money, but you also give a lot of joy. Yeah,
absolutely. And I really love your methodology in thinking about architecture as a sort of an orchestra or symphony. In the theater and in film, there are so many invisible hands, right? We have so many creative collaborators who are working closely with us, or folks that we may never even know who are working on our projects. What is your creative process? How would you describe your creative process? And then who are the key collaborators inside of that process for you?
Thank you. Well, I think most art are collaborative, especially architecture, right? I mean, it's not my money most of the time. I have a lot of team, and then the clients are not me either, and the users and the people who operate and everything else. So it take a village to actually make a good piece of architecture. So I think it's important, just like in a kitchen, right? I think it's important to start with the vision. Mm-hmm. Of course, the clients are very important. We have a saying in our profession that the project is as good as a client. And it's kind of true, because the client is the vision. The client will actually end up maintaining the building too, right? So there's something to good. But one thing which is important, and I was asked 3 days ago about why I always wear the jumpsuit, like this coverall today, and I wear this almost every day, because when I moved from Japan to the U.S., again, I'm sorry, it's a long answer, but in the U.S. we have the owner, architect, and contractor, right? The triangle of non-trust, right? So no one can trust anyone, so therefore it has to be a triangle, right? So therefore it's the architect and the client team up on the contractor, architect and client, whatever, right? Whereas in Japan it's the client and the builder team. So the architect and the builder are together. And so when I moved to America, most architects dress like their clients, like suits and things like that. And so I felt that, going back to your question, the builders are on my team. They actually cook my food, right? I only write the recipe, right? So if they don't cook it well, it reflects on me and on everything else. And a lot of time, to be honest, they got treated very badly, right? So I dress like this. So when I go to the job site, they look at me and it's like, oh, he's one of us, right? So that was my way of signifying to the workers that I'm with you. We're all doing this together.
That's beautiful.
Yes.
Speaking of trust, we talked a little bit last evening sort of about what a museum experience is and what it can be, and how what we ought to make it as curators. Do we want to invite people in and make them feel comfortable? Do we want to shake them up? What are our intentions inside of that? And you mentioned, you said the word trust, that the museum, that there's a certain kind of trust that people have in going to a museum because they know that they're going to be sort of taken care of, guided. Can you talk a little bit about your thoughts on that?
Thank you. I think, we live in a world that we have more humanity, more humans, but less humanity. Right? We feel lonely when we're surrounded by most people in the world. We don't have the connection to the essence of what humans stand for. And I feel like museum definitely is the part for that. I'm not talking about deep heritage collection, even contemporary art. All of these reflect who we are as humans, the human conditions, the problems from different points. But I think the trust aspect and what we talked about, yesterday was meaningful, because I think museums always been a temple, right? I think museums withhold the key to civilization for the next generation. So therefore it has the sacredness of a temple. And because of that, it is intimidating to many, and it also become exclusive to many as well. So to be able to gain that trust from everyone to say, we hear you, we welcome you, we want you to understand why we stand for you, right? That has to start from the human to human trust or relationship first. And then, I advocate the idea of moving museum from temple to museum as cultural playground, which in a way, the Walker is already a cultural playground. So this is already kind of towards that, because look at today, right? I mean, you can have a cocktail, you have some kind of comedy show, you go look at art, mini golf, and many other things, right? So there's already a lot of fun happening there. But I think it's so important in that trust that, yes, there's a moment when you have such an inspiring sense of spirit that within the same museum, you can have fun, you have an hour, or you can have a whole day. That is only happen if you surrender your experience in the hands of, the organization you feel have your interest at heart.
Absolutely, beautifully articulated. Thinking about a museum, like the Museum of Natural History or even the Metropolitan Museum of Art, as sort of keepers of culture, where we might bear witness to art and artifacts and objects that tell us something about a people and a place. With a contemporary art museum, what is the role of a contemporary art museum in reflecting back to us our present and possibly our future? What is the sort of future-making role of a contemporary art museum?
Yeah, at the opening of the Met last week, I heard something from the delegations from the Pacific Islands, right? They use the word ancestral future, which is something that, it seems so easy, but I never heard anyone say that before. So I felt that the idea that nothing ever go away, everything surrounded us, right? And I was reminded by the show Up Now Ways of Knowing, which I have no way of knowing. I just come upon it by myself, but I was struck by the quality of those storytelling, right? I mean, for me, not for a lot of people, contemporary art is extremely complex because every artist has a story to tell. And you have to go through who they are, the research, the story, to really be able to appreciate the layers of storytelling and signs and many things that they went through, right? So the show, like Ways of Knowing, is like deep chapter of like mini episodes that you have to go through. But somehow it opened doors to me, even though I may not get to the deep level of what the artist is trying to tell. I have my own way of taking something from it. So I think on that sense, it's like, we talked about that last night too. I'm sorry to go deep, but Deleuze, Gilles Deleuze said that history is not a linear story, right? It's a mind of stories. And, philosophy is the same. So there's no one that know what that line looked like. It got changed every 10 years. Art is like that too. So instead of looking at something that you need to learn or to understand, use the museum as a gold mine. That you go and you excavate what you want to. You don't have to like everything. But if something kind of attract your eye, excavate, right? And okay, well, what do I know? Why am I looking at this? Why this attract to me? What it said about me, right? So all of these is something I feel is so meaningful for museums because it's impossible to everyone to actually like everything. But if you use your senses and excavate at the right mind, these are living minds of the future as well.
Ashe. It takes me back to sort of your description of a museum as a sort of a playground and a place for discovery, and mining is an interesting, the idea that we extract something that might maybe bring us closer to ourselves even as we're exploring the world. I would love to hear what your impressions are. This is what I've learned in the Twin Cities. We love to hear about ourselves here. We love to know what other people think about this and incredible
I have a question
city.
for you too, but that will come later. Yes.
So I'm curious, and I wonder if some of my friends here are curious as well. What are your impressions? You've built such extraordinary civic spaces and museums in all over the world. What are your impressions of Minneapolis, the Twin Cities? What strikes you about this place?
Well, it will sound like a lip service, but I'm always struck by how rich a cultural place this is. For not a big size museum and not very boasty, right? This is not culture in a sense of look at us, we have X, Y, and Z, right? This is not about that at all. Of course, we talked about that last night, the theater, the museums. Like the fact that the museum like at the Walker exists here we were talking, again, I'm sorry, I felt like I'm giving you lip service, but the point of view here is so clear for the last 25, 30 years at least that I know of it. And the way that it exists in this sense that, it just so balanced so beautifully between thoughtfulness and also exploration, right? Which I see it as, of course, through the lens of the Walker and others, and to see how that balance has really drive this place. And, when you look at cities in America where culture really live and thrive well, this is definitely among top 3 that I know. So I felt that it's such a wonderful place. We talked about some of our friends like, wow, this is a wonderful place to live, to be entertained, to be inspired by, right? So on that note, and I know you, okay, now back to you. So, we were doing our dancing in the green room before, she's amazing choreograph and dance and things like that as well. Of course, you've been here for a long time.
7 years.
Yes,
7 years.
but you're from New York before. I mean,
Yeah.
you kind of speak like a native. You're like belonging, yes. So, at the Guthrie before and now at the
The Capri.
The Capri, exactly, which I joke it sounds like a resort, but that's okay. Or cigarette, but
It's a vibe. It's a vibe.
so what kind of move are you making? What kind of shaking? Like, is it going to be like a fast pace, slow pace? How do you plan to rock the world?
Yes, great question. I didn't see this coming, but I'll do my best. So I was saying to Amanda earlier that at the beginning of the year, I became very serious about making a move and making a shift because I felt compelled to be in a place and in a position where I could really and truly make an impact. And I just, I thought, well, I could go to another city, I could go to New York or LA, or, but I've really fallen in love with the Twin Cities, and I've built such an extraordinary community. I feel like I've been welcomed into this community in such a way that I really, I was compelled to find my next artistic home here. And so when the Capri Theater bubbled up, I was really excited because the first time I saw the Capri, it was just going through its renovation. There's been a 20,000 square foot renovation. A lot of the values that you espoused in your lecture are expressed in this place with bright open windows where we let the light in. Even the black box has a wall of windows that we can pull down. So it's a multidisciplinary art space. I identify as a interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary artist, and I love the cross-pollination of theater and film and dance and poetry and music and live music. It's also where Prince did his first solo concert ever, so that was his debut, and so that just felt super cool and connected to this idea of creating a platform for the next generation. And so I'm really excited to again, work with the community, and I need to go through my listening tour and my research to really learn who the community is and what they need this space to be and to become. And of course I have ideas, but I'm really excited to activate the community and the artistic community and center the artists and create a cultural hub.
Well, because someone like you who decided to stay, I think that enriched the overall village, the pie, right? Because allow everyone to benefit from that conversation. And I really feel like culture exists in that kind of network, that we allow ourselves to connect, and there's appreciation and a sense of learning from each other. I always feel, I'm glad that you mentioned architecture for the theater too, because I felt that for the last, 150 years, 200 years, the art has been divided because of division of labor, right? So architecture becomes its own thing, architecture stay here, painting go into this, sculpture go there, dance go to opera, so we all, so I feel it's a task for architect. I was joking with you yesterday, like I feel like architect is like the big sister, right? So we have to host everyone. So the job is like, we have an ego. Our ego is to host, to create an environment that everything thrive. Painting. Like if you look at the Greek sculptures, right? Each of the art form is represented by a goddess. I'm sure you've seen one of those, like goddess that look like painting and sculpture and music and dance and things, and the architecture always the big mama in the back. like supporting everyone, like, hey, come in, we have a platform for you. And I think, when architects want to be artists, they want to become a sculptor. And I think that's missing the point, right? I think we are an artist who create environment for people to thrive in, artists and also, people in general. So I'm looking forward to see how you're going to test drive this new architecture and just completely rock the world.
Absolutely. And we're looking forward to having Kulapat Yantrasast back in the Twin Cities as often as possible.
Yes,
Thank you
please.
so much. Thank you all for
Thank
joining
you.
us for
Thank
this
you.
talk. Thank you, Kulapat. Thank you, Walker.